difficulty, there emerges a guiding light, a beacon that cuts through the darkness. Welcome to Beacon of Truth with your host, Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beacon of Truth. I am your host, Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, and you're listening on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. So great to be here with you today. And where is here for me? I am in Gainesville, Virginia. I'm leading a parish retreat this weekend at Holy Trinity Catholic Church, again in Gainesville, Virginia. I was invited here by my very good friend, Deacon Gerard Marie Anthony, one of my favorite people in the whole world. Awesome deacon, has been ordained 8 years, and we've collaborated. We've spoken together for the Sophia Institute, which is we've led trainings for teachers, Catholic school teachers, as part of the Sophia Institute. And the last time we were together was in San Francisco, giving presentations there. And so he invited me to come to this parish. And so tonight we're kicking it off. Look, I can't think of a better way to start. Eucharistic adoration during my talk, right? So I'm talking about parenting and, the roles of parents and families, and while Jesus exposed the Blessed Sacrament. You know what that means? I'm not going to be walking around because I ain't going to walk in front of Jesus. I'm not going to walk back and forth in front of the Lord. So I'll be in the ambo for tonight's talk. And then tomorrow I'm giving a talk on pro-life evangelization, followed by the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass, where I'll be preaching. And tomorrow I'm going to be focused on St. Josephine Bakhita, whose feast day is tomorrow. And then after Mass, I'm giving my third talk about how we can address the issues in the culture. Right. So and then I head back to Portland. So this is a really quick swing, but I'm absolutely thrilled to be here. And getting here was a little bit of a challenge because we got to Atlanta. I did a red eye, got to Atlanta, got to the next flight to Washington Dulles, got on the plane, pushed back. And then we were sitting there for a while. I'm like, I fly enough to know this is not good when we're not moving toward the tarmac. And so he came on and said that they could not set the parking brake. I'm like, what? So you can't. So they had so they went back to the gate. They had some technicians come on. They couldn't get. He said they couldn't get the air pressure stabilized for the parking brake. So we had to switch planes. So we got off the plane. Another plane came at another gate, and so it cost a couple hours delay. But made it. Got here safely. My good friend Deacon Gerard picked me up at the airport, and I'm thrilled to be here. Now, this is a first for Beacon of Truth. Now, we've had guests on before, of course, but this is the first time that we actually have a guest literally sitting right next to me. So if you're watching on Facebook Live or YouTube, you're looking at Dr. Andrew Kubick, who is an expert in Catholic bioethics. He is a parishioner here at Holy Trinity. So I figured, you know what? We're going to have him on the show anyway, but why not have him on with me? Right? So we could talk about these issues. Well, so say hello to everybody.
Hello, everyone. It is just such a blessing to be here and to be your first live guest. So yeah. I'm just really excited, and hopefully I'll be able to share some really important information and to help people along the way, especially with these dilemmas that so many people face.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. This is going to be a great conversation. We'd love you to be part of the conversation, especially if you have a scenario regarding an elderly parent or a sick child and like end-of-life care or end-of-life, if they're on life support, when do we take them off life support? If they're, all those kinds of bioethical kinds of issues. We'd love to hear from you today. Give us a call, 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. Now, remember we said during the anniversary show a couple days ago how people after the show will have a comment, or they want to or didn't get a chance to call in, so they'll either leave a voicemail message for us or send us an email at beacon@ewtn.com. We had a woman call in when I mentioned, remember we had the caller around whose birthday it was, and he said he also shared a birthday with Cardinal Dolan. And I took that opportunity to explain when a bishop turns 75, they have to turn in a resignation, but they're still the archbishop or bishop until the Pope accepts that resignation, and then a process happens after that. And so we got a kind of a follow-up question on that, and so let's listen to it, and I'll give an answer to that question as well.
Cardinal Dolan is from Washington, Missouri, which I am here. He has Cardinal Dolan is from Washington, Missouri, which I am here. He has family still here. He was just here to say Mass last Sunday. I heard that after 75, Cardinal Dolan may not be the cardinal anymore. What would happen to him after he is no longer a cardinal? And why would they take that away from him? Thank you. All
right. Great question. So he's still going to be a cardinal. He will always still be a cardinal, right? The only way you can get that title of, remember, cardinals are they're archbishops. Okay, cardinals are bishops, but they get a special elevation to the title of cardinal. And the main thing for that is voting for the next pope, right? That's one of the main reasons that the cardinals exist. So he's going to be the retired archbishop, cardinal archbishop of New York, but he will still be a cardinal. He'll still have faculty, still say Mass. He just won't be in charge of the Archdiocese of New York anymore. And so once he retires, he can stay in New York. He can go back to where you're from, the same hometown where he's from, and, live his life there and exercise, give talks, lead pilgrimages, do all those kinds of things. He'll be free to do that kind of thing now. But remember, he's still the Archbishop of New York. And again, this goes for any bishop or archbishop in any diocese or archdiocese or eparchy if they're in the Eastern Church. He's still the prelate in charge until the Holy Father accepts the resignation. Once he accepts the resignation, he's no longer technically in charge, but he's always still going to be a bishop and a cardinal. All right, so no fear. It's not a punishment or anything like that. Again, every bishop has to do this when they turn 75. That's just the way that things are done in the church. So great follow-up question. All right, well, I love doing this show each and every day because we have a great team of people working behind the scenes to bring you a quality product each and every day. I'm talking about Michael McCall doing the social media, Matt Kabinski screening the calls, and my partner, not in crime, in fidelity and holiness, right. Ace McKay, or striving for fidelity and holiness. Ace McKay, how you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. Wish you were in town this weekend. My buddy and I are going to the IMAX for the Zeppelin documentary, so you're gonna miss out.
In fact, you know what? My wife, tonight, as a matter of fact, there's also a documentary out about, no, you talking about Bob Dylan, right? The movie?
No, that's different. This is a whole, this is like.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying my wife is going to see the Dylan thing.
The Dylan movie?
Going to see the Zeppelin.
Yeah, I've heard good things about that. Like, it's a really good, like, you see a lot of Dylan's, backstory, and you hear a lot of things that people didn't necessarily know about his career.
Yeah, for me personally, in the kind of genre of music that I like, I'd be more interested, like, going with you to see the Zeppelin.
Yeah, of course.
Documentary.
Well, and it's an IMAX, so it's like,
I actually met him once.
Really?
He came to the University of Portland where I worked as police chief for 11 years. He did a concert there, and our stadium holds 5,000.
Yeah.
And he did a concert there, and so I obviously got backstage and stuff like that, so I got a chance to meet him briefly before the show.
Nice.
So yeah. So
always 2 degree separation of someone, right?
Yeah, and I think I could hear every third word he was saying or when he was singing. So I think it was a little bit high, shall we say? Yeah. A little bit under the influence.
There's a fun story that surfaced when the documentary on We Are the World came out that Stevie Wonder impersonated Dylan in front of Dylan to teach him his part. So he didn't know how to sing. He wasn't quite sure. Well, what do I sing on this? This is out of my normal scope of songwriting. And so literally in the documentary, you see Stevie, in full Stevie glory, pretending to sound like Dylan so Dylan can learn his part for We Are the World.
I would
amazing.
love to see it. If that's on film somewhere,
it is.
YouTube,
I think Netflix. I think is
to
streaming it. Yeah, you got you got to check it out, man. It and there's so many little stories like that. Like, you know, the whole night everybody's waiting for Prince, right? And he's like, "Well, I'm not coming if I can't play guitar." And they're like, "Well, no, nobody's getting a solo. It's a group. You know, it's for a good cause." He's like, "Nah." So Prince just totally snubbed him. It's like, I ain't coming. So it's a lot of little stories that you're like, this is amazing.
Yeah. Boy, I tell you. But fly on the wall in that recording session, huh?
Well, and that's at the end of it. I think it was Diana Ross. She was like, I didn't want to leave. I just started crying because it's like, this is a reunion of something that will never happen again. All right. And she's true.
Yeah, that's so true. Listen to Beacon of Truth. Our guest today is Dr. Andrew Kubick, who's sitting right here. We're talking about Catholic bioethics. 833-288 EWTN. That's 833-288-3986.
This is Conversations with Consequences, where we delve deeper into issues affecting our church, our country, and our core, the family.
As Catholics, we need to be informed, aware, and able to talk through some of the tough topics that we're facing in our culture and in our world. Conversations with Consequences gives us the tools to do so.
It's not enough to pray. We have to be a light for the world.
Conversations with Consequences, tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio.
This is Life Issues with Brad Mattis, president of Life Issues Institute.
Gideon, a Dutch member of parliament, was silenced for revealing the ugly reality of late-term abortion. During a committee meeting on medical ethics, the young MP showed a model of an unborn baby at 22 weeks. Abortion is legal up to 24 weeks. A female committee member actually took the model out of Gideon's hands and tried to hide it under the table, even though there were no rules against using it. Because he was silenced, he made a video explaining everything. So far, it's been seen over 70,000 times. Their attempt to censor the truth backfired. I have been to the Netherlands many times to expose the reality of abortion. If it is such a social good, why do advocates of abortion try to hide the truth of what it really is? Please pray for Gideon.
Follow us on Facebook at Life Issues Institute and stay informed, more informed than you've ever been.
Funky Friday.
Yeah, there you go. You gotta have the wow Friday, man.
Right?
I tell you.
What's that? Is it Joe Walsh? Look at these guys. They're just a bunch of wah-wahs.
Yeah, I was when I was playing with my son this week, you know, I hit that wah pedal. I don't think Brian May uses it on Brighton Rock, but I thought, why not? Just have fun. Just lean on that wah a little bit for that, at least for the head, because it's actually a different key. So the very first opening part of that song is a half step higher, a whole step higher than the actual when you start playing the verse.
Sure.
You know, so lots of fun. Good stuff, man.
Did he enjoy jamming with Dad?
Oh, he did. Yeah, we're going to do it again actually when I get back, if I get back, because now they're talking about ice or something like that. Ice, and I'm like, come on, I can't catch a break.
We got to get the band together.
Yeah, tell me about it. You listen to Beacon of Truth. I'm your host, Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, and my guest today, I guess we could say in studio, because he's sitting right next to me here, Dr. Andrew Kubick, who's a bioethics expert and author. And I'm here at Holy Trinity Catholic Church in Gainesville, Virginia, where I'm leading a parish retreat tonight and tomorrow. And Dr. Kubick is a parishioner here. So I thought, you know what? We know this is an important issue to talk about, so why not have him on the show? And so he's sitting here with me today. And so we're going to introduce him after we break into this, of course, the Soulful Psalms. But we'd love to hear from you. If you have a bioethics question, as we begin to talk about this topic, give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. I'm sure that Dr. Kubick would love to answer your question. 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986.
Well, I think we all have those people in our lives that are a little difficult to get along with. So who better to learn how to than Dr. Ray Guarendi? His wit and wisdoms help out a ton with his new book, How to Get Along with Almost Everybody. And you can find out those truths when you check it out in the religious catalog. When you buy Catholic, shop EWTNRC.com.
My friends, it is now time for the Soulful Psalms segment of Beacon of Truth. The Soulful Psalms is where we take one of the Psalms from the wisdom literature of the Old Testament that we hear in every holy sacrifice of the Mass, and we connect that Psalm to your everyday lived experience. And the awesome thing is that this Soulful Psalms segment is its own podcast. You can go to the EWTN website and go to Podcast Central, or go to my website, deaconharold.com. Scroll down, you see a big banner that says Soulful Psalms. Click on that. It'll take you directly to the EWTN Podcast Central page where you can download it directly. Or you can download it and listen on the EWTN app, which is what I do, or your favorite podcast platform, SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, and listen to the Soulful Psalms as its own podcast. And as usual, I'm using the Revised Grail Psalm translation, which is approved by the bishops for use in the Mass, and it was compiled by the Benedictine monks of Conception Abbey. So today, we're going to take just a look at a couple of verses from Psalm 94. So Psalm 94 is in book 4 of the Psalms, Psalms 90 to 106. And like many of the Psalms in this books 4, in this section of the Psalms, it does not have a prescript or a superscript to this Psalm. Now, we've already started diving into this Psalm, and we're going to pick up in verses 16 and 17. Those are the two verses we're going to look at today. So if you got your Bible, Psalm 94, let's start at verse 16. Who will stand up for me against the wicked? Who will defend me from those who do evil? Right? So you see the psalmist here, he's in a situation where he's recognizing that people don't want to hear what he has to say. He said, some people feel, he says, well, has the Lord abandoned us? God has to see what's going on around here. Who's going to stand? Like, he's asking a rhetorical question. I mean, duh. Who else is going to stand up for him but God? But he still asks the question, who's going to stand up for us against the wicked? Who's going to defend us from those who are going to do evil? They know the answer before they even ask the question. They know it's going to be the Lord. But still, again, part of that human nature, we have to sometimes say things out loud, right? We have to kind of put things on the table, right? And that's what they're doing here. And they know the answer is the Lord before they ask the question, because look what happens in verse 17. If the Lord were not to help me, my soul would soon go down to the silence. Wow. What amazing trust in God. Knowing that if the Lord weren't going to help me, I'm lost. If the Lord doesn't come to my aid, if the Lord doesn't assist me, if he doesn't give me his grace, if I don't cooperate with his divine mercy, then I'm lost. I go down to the silence. Now, when he means go down to the silence, here they're talking about in Hades in Greek, or Sheol in Hebrew, which is the abode of the dead. It is not the eternal fire of hell, right? Because there was no hell yet, right? Because all the people that died from Adam, Eve, Abraham, Noah, David, Isaiah, all those folks from the Old Testament went down to Sheol or Hades, the abode of the dead, right? And they waited there for Jesus to come on the Holy Saturday to bring those souls out of that place of waiting to heaven, right? Into the bosom of Abraham, as Jesus tells us in the parable there. So they know that if the Lord were not to rescue, if the Lord were not to help us, we'd be lost. And what a beautiful lesson for us. If we don't put our trust in the Lord and we start trusting in the things of the culture or people of the culture, cults of personalities, popular rock stars or athletes or whoever, then we will be lost, because we'll never satisfy the deepest longing and desire of our hearts, which is intimate, personal, loving, and life-giving communion with the Lord. All right, so beautiful. So now I want to introduce today's guest, Dr. Andrew Kubick, who's a bioethicist. He's the Deputy Director of the National Center for Religious Freedom Education and a research fellow in bioethics and medical conscience at the Religious Freedom Institute. He serves as a personal consultations ethicist for the National Catholic Bioethics Center. And we know that center well because Dr. Tad Pacholczyk was part of that. He's also an adjunct instructor of bioethics at the University of Mary, right? Great Catholic university, which I've spoken at before. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful school. And he just published a book, Transplanting the Womb. Boy, I can't wait to dig into this in the next segment. Catholic bioethical analysis. You heard right. Transplanting the womb. Talk about bioethics issues. So great to have you here, Dr. Kubick.
It is really a blessing. Thank you
for
having me.
All right. Well, this is your first time here,
yes.
And this is probably the first time that many of our listeners and viewers are hearing and seeing you. So tell us a little bit about your faith story, your faith journey,
Sure.
And what got you interested in bioethics?
Oh, absolutely. So I do have to say, every time I hear my bio read, one of the things that I wish I would include, although most people ask for the professional bio, is first and foremost Catholic, husband,
yes.
father. And when I hear all the things that, through the grace of God, I've been able to work on, thinking about the book, the dissertation that was actually preceded the book, have to give a shout out to my wife, because she is just the heart and soul of that house, and her sacrifice, her work, has given me the opportunity to follow the Lord's call in this way. So just a lot of love and support from her. So with regard to my faith journey, grew up Catholic, had wonderful parents, prayed the rosary every day after dinner. Altar server. I was actually an altar server at 6. I hear a lot of people say, wow, I can't believe. But I remember even after Mass, I would sit in the priest chair and say, this is where I want to be. And then I had a lot of questions about whether a priest can even have a dog. And so that started kind of deflating my interest in the priesthood. But nevertheless, I had so much respect, profound respect for priests, for deacons like yourself. And through a lot of prayer, through a lot of discernment, I ended up hearing the voice of God saying he's calling me to marriage. Met my lovely wife right after college. And, I do have that, sad to say, very common experience in college where I never completely disowned my faith, but I had a lot of questions, didn't practice it the way that I ought to. But it was really meeting my wife, girlfriend at the time, and she said, she was so strong. She was the youth group leader of her parish. She went to Penn State, and she worked in their Newman organization there, and she was just such a strong person of faith. It brought me back. Mm-hmm. And it brought me back because really at first I wanted to impress her.
Yeah.
But that's the way the Lord brought me back, is he's like, impress her, but I know behind her, here I am. Kind of like that beautiful image of creation where Eve is underneath God's arm. Like, even though I saw Rachel, my soon-to-be wife, I knew the Lord was behind her too. And so she was able to really call me back, bring me back into the faith. And we really strove and we prayed and we worked really hard to try to be the best Catholic husband and wife we can be. And then our first child was born. Zechariah is his name. I was a tenured teacher at the time. My wife had one more year of tenure, so I actually took a year off. I took a year of paternity leave. I still say to this day the best year of my life. Took a year of paternity leave while my wife went back to work just to get that year of tenure completed for teaching. And I know a lot of people advised us. They said, well, when your baby sleeps, you should sleep. Well, when Zechariah slept, I went back to school. I felt the calling to, I was always pro-life. Even in those times in college when I was really questioning things or challenged practicing my faith, I always had such a profound respect for life. And so I started looking into this bioethics. I was introduced to that term. I started looking into it. And what I realized, it's almost this gift of tongues that we hear at Pentecost. I view bioethics as a way to use reason to explain my pro-life position to a world that may very quickly discount if I use the catechism or some document from the Congregation of the Doctrine of Faith. Bioethics is a reasoned approach to explain, really, the dignity of the human person that we all know from our faith. And so I went back to school and really, I haven't stopped. I think I'm still in school. I don't know. I have to look at my transcript these days, but I just kept on going and just eating up as much as I can, knowing the importance of this subject, being humbled by it, being inspired by it. I completed my doctoral dissertation back in 2021. The subject of my doctoral dissertation, uterine transplants. And that's what led me into the book. I completed that doctoral program at the Regina Apostolorum, which is a pontifical university in Rome.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fascinating. I love that. I love that. And so now you're teaching at the University of Maryland, adjunct, right?
I am. You mentioned so many jobs. So I work full-time at the Religious Freedom Institute in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
I also work part-time in the consultations department for the National Catholic Bioethics Center.
Yep.
And then I adjunct. So I do essentially 2 courses a year, school year, at the University of Mary. And I do that remotely.
I was just about to ask you, do it online or do you go to Bismarck?
One day I want to be in Bismarck, but unfortunately not yet.
All right. Well, we got Dr. Andrew Kubick as our guest today talking about Catholic bioethics. Would love to hear from you today, my friends. 833-288 EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. If you missed any of today's show or want to share it with someone, you can find Beacon of Truth on demand at EWTN.com/radio.
Hi, this is Mike Aquilina with a few words about St. Maximus the Confessor. The emperor wanted to compromise doctrine in order to make peace with heretics. It was all about politics, but Maximus the Confessor dared to oppose him and would not back down. For this, he was charged with treason and had his tongue and right hand cut off so that he could not speak or write against the emperor. His silence resounded everywhere, and truth prevailed.
Father Benedict Rochelle.
I don't think people should have negative fears of God, but I think you should get a lump in your throat. You should feel excited. Suppose I was going to take you and introduce you to the Pope or to the president of some country or something. You might get a little lump in your throat. Forget it. Every day, you, I, live and move and have our being in the presence of God. These are the class of feelings we should have, and we should have them to an intense degree if we really had the sight of Almighty God. These feelings are the feelings which we shall have if we realize His presence, and in proportion as we believe that He is present, we shall have them. And not to have them is not to realize, not to believe that God is present to us.
The people you know and trust are on EWTN.
EWTN. Live truth, live Catholic.
Hi, this is Cy Kellett. Join us later today on Catholic Answers Live as we do our best to explain and defend the Catholic faith. Catholic Answers Live, 6 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio. Now, back to Beacon of Truth.
Special intro there.
That's right. Big Toms, baby. Big Toms.
Big Toms. That's it. That's it. I saw a video with Mike Portnoy with that monster setup that he has with 3 bass drums, all tuned a little bit differently. But in order to make all that fit, he had to shorten his tom. You know, like one of the big. I'm like, how do you do that and still get the sound? You know, but they found a way somehow to do it.
I tell you, it was a huge load off reading Alex Van Halen's book, because as a drummer, I think every drummer who looked to him as an idol of some kind always tried to emulate our drums to sound like his. Come to find out, he used an electric Simmons kit in the studio and then just tuned them to match it for the tour.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I'm like,
because
all
he
this
always
time,
put a live kit on tour.
That's what everybody thought, and he was like, nope. He goes, it was always, and you know, Simmons has that unique like stop sign look to him, and so he just had the big pads.
No way.
Every album from pretty much 1984 on was that way.
Oh, did not know. That's really
so all the drummers right now are going, like the load is off of you. Just relax.
How awesome is that? All right. I'm Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers. You're listening to Beacon of Truth, and today we have a special guest in studio, Dr. Andrew Kubick. I'm here at Holy Trinity Parish in Gainesville, Virginia, doing a parish retreat. Dr. Kubick is a parishioner here. I just want to send an invitation quickly. If you're anywhere in the Gainesville area, I'm speaking tonight, starting at 6 p.m. I'm giving a talk on the role and responsibility of Catholic parents during Eucharistic adoration while the Lord is exposed. And then after that, I'll be deaconing at Mass. Deacon Gerard Marie Anthony will be giving the homily. Then tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, I'm giving a talk on pro-life evangelization, followed by the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass, where I'll be preaching on St. Josephine Bakhita, followed by a final talk. And everything will be done by like 11:30, right? So everything will be done by 11:30. You can have the whole rest of your day. I'll be giving a final talk on engaging the culture. So would love, again, we're at the Holy Trinity Parish in Gainesville, Virginia. Come on down and join us. Would love to see you and love to meet you in person. Again, if you have I think we have a couple people on hold right now. We're going to get to your calls right away to talk to Dr. Andrew Kubick about Catholic bioethics. We have an expert today, so we want to hear your call. If you have questions about an elderly parent, end-of-life care, abortion type issues, anything with Catholic bioethics, we have the expert here, Dr. Andrew Kubick. Give us a call today on Beacon of Truth. Would love to hear from you. The phone number to call is 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986.
Never heard you actually turn deacon into a verb. That's the first time in a year I've heard you.
Yes, how creative can we get?
That's right. All right, real quick, don't forget this weekend, The Art of Catholic, one of many of the great conversations happening at Podcast Central. You can check that out, EWTN.com/podcast. Take it with you wherever you go. Some really good, passionate discussions about faith when you get some time. So The Art of Catholic, available at Podcast Central through EWTN Radio.
All right. Again, we're talking with Dr. Andrew Kubick, a bioethics expert who's here. I'm here again, Holy Spirit Catholic Church in Gainesville, Virginia, and he's sitting right here next to me, our first live in-person guest. If you have any question about Catholic bioethics, we have the man here to answer your questions. Give us a call, 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. Let's dive right into the calls. Let's go first to Terry, calling from North Carolina. Thank you for patiently holding, Terry. She's listening on Divine Mercy Radio. Terry, welcome to Beacon of Truth.
Hey, thank you. I was over at the North Carolina Museum of Art about 30 minutes ago, and as I was leaving, there were two young people there with the ACLU raising money, and they said that one of the things ACLU does is to try to help women who've been sexually assaulted to not have to go through with it. But from what I understand, I said two wrongs don't make a right. But what are your thoughts in the case of rape? When is abortion? What are your thoughts on using abortion as a way to solve what seems like a solution for rape?
That is a classic question, Terry. Great. And so, Dr. Kubick, dive right in, my friend.
Terry, thank you for the question. As Deacon mentioned, this is one that we commonly hear, not commonly occurring, but a question that's commonly asked, because it's really looking to try to find whether there's an exception to the Catholic Church's teaching on abortion. And so when you're dealing with, and I like to distinguish between direct and indirect abortion, when you're talking about direct abortion, where the intention and the action specifically targets the child for death, there is no circumstance, regardless of how difficult and tragic it may be for the mother in this circumstance, there's no circumstance when that's morally permitted to directly and intentionally target the child for death. Now, in cases of rape, and I think it's really important to emphasize this because often we don't get in the mainstream media the full picture of the church's response. The Catholic Church teaches that if a woman were to be sexually assaulted, she can present herself immediately, and she should, to a hospital. And the hospital can actually go through a series of protocols. And they're going to be really testing two different hormones. One hormone would tell them if the woman is already pregnant, and if she presents herself immediately or near immediately. That's incredibly unlikely. It takes quite some time for the sperm to reach the egg. They can also test to see if the woman has ovulated, which makes it possible that she could become pregnant. So the first one is to test if pregnancy has occurred. The second one to test if ovulation has occurred, and which could make pregnancy more likely. If both of those tests are negative, so there's no evidence that there is already a child who is brought into existence, the hospital, Catholic hospital, can actually respond by providing different types of medication that can incapacitate. So they can stop the sperm in their tracks, because that's not seen as a contraceptive act, because the woman didn't willfully enter into that act. It was against her will. It was an assault on her. And those sperm are seen as continuing the assault on her. They are not welcome inside of that woman. And so provided there's no hormonal evidence that life now exists in her womb, the Catholic Church does permit the sperm to be incapacitated, so they cannot reach that egg and they cannot create new human life. So the Catholic Church is very quick to respond in this circumstance. And what they do also is encourage women, God forbid if they are assaulted like this, to present themselves to a hospital as soon as possible, because that makes the interventions that are morally permissible even more effective.
Wow. That was awesome.
Is that okay?
No, I was thinking about, yeah, that's right. I mean, we don't hear enough about this.
No, we don't.
We don't hear. I mean, when would a priest ever preach from this from the pulpit? I mean, it'd be weird, right? Because it has to fit in with the gospel. But this is good stuff. This is good information that I think a lot of Catholics should know. This is awesome. Now, from me, just quickly from a law enforcement perspective, and from a Catholic perspective, we view the child as a victim of crime. Mm-hmm. And so when someone is a victim of crime, you don't take the life of a crime victim. Mm-hmm. So imagine someone gets mugged and they walk into they immediately go to the police station. The desk sergeant is back there. I just was robbed. What? You're a victim of crime? Yes. He wouldn't shoot him.
No.
Right? I mean, because you're a victim of crime. So a child and the woman that was a victim of that violent act, or even incest or something like that, they are a victim of crime. Any child that was conceived is a victim of crime. We don't take the life of crime victims.
No, we don't.
We should provide an atmosphere in our culture where we protect the dignity and the rights of both the mother and the child.
That's right.
You're right.
We must emphasize from the pulpit. We must emphasize from the home. We must emphasize wherever we have the opportunity that we, as the Catholic Church, love and respect and cherish and really, truly desire to protect woman and child.
Yes.
Woman and child.
Amen. Wow.
And Terry, if I could just say one other thing to
please.
all of the listeners, what I just shared with you in terms of an answer is from a very important document that any of the listeners can get a hold of. It's free online. It's called the Ethical and Religious Directives for Catholic Healthcare Services. It's from the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, and it provides answers like this to these really difficult questions.
All right, beautiful. Well, we're talking about Catholic bioethics with our expert today, Dr. Andrew Kubick. Would love to hear from you. 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. Molly is calling from Maryland, listening on EWTN.com. Molly, welcome to Beacon of Truth.
Thank you, and thank you, Dr. Kubick. The reason I was calling is the only time I had heard about medical ethics, in 1980, I was in undergraduate school with a woman whose father was Dr. Edmund Pellegrino. I'm sure you heard he's a medical ethicist. He was president of Catholic University, but he was the first person that, I had started to hear about that. And even though my father was a pro-life obstetrician, when we had to go through infertility as a military spouse, it was very hard to get information, and we ended up, choosing adoption. It was just a wonderful blessing. But I just wanted to call and say thank you, and also encourage, how do you like we could go to the document you recommended, but for the normal lay person, even though I had a father like that I could talk to, it would be really nice if there were like not even specific, like an overall arching principle or talks that you could give or podcasts where people can inform themselves, so I can teach my 2 older daughters some of the ways to respond about this. I mean, we were raised that the baby is a baby, but the whole idea of the medical ethics and different types of fertilization, and it's getting very complicated, and it would be very nice to have someone put it in a layman's terms so we, as Catholics evangelizing, can thoughtfully and kindly explain.
Great point. Dr. Kubick?
Yeah, absolutely. As Deacon Harold, as you mentioned when you were sharing a little bit about my background, I emphasize a lot of education. It's really what I'm called to be as an educator, regardless of where I'm working. And so I certainly have the desire, the heart, really, to get this information out. I was just, thinking about St. Thomas Aquinas' very famous phrase, it's better to illumine than to simply shine, to get that information so others can know. It's better to have everyone know than rather just ourselves. If we have this, gift of knowledge that through the grace of God I have learned to get it into as many hands, hearts, and heads as possible. And so I can kind of rattle off a list of
people can come back and listen to this on the podcast. Yeah, go ahead.
So
people can have the resources.
Absolutely. So the National Catholic Bioethics Center, first and foremost, is one that I would go to. I'd go to ncbcenter.org. And they are just such a gift to the church and such a gift to humanity in general. Whether or not you're Catholic, it's a way to properly understand what the church teaches in this specific area. Father Tad Paholchik, who you mentioned earlier.
Love him.
He has what I think is just such a gift. It's a series of essays called Making Sense of Bioethics. Each one of the essays is under a different topic. And he must have over 100 topics. And they're all free online, Making Sense of Bioethics. And what's really nice about them, even when I was teaching, I would have the students read these, one page front and back. And he would cover condom use. He would cover, as you questioned, reproductive technologies, euthanasian physician-assisted suicide. You can kind of go through the entire list. He even has one on uterine transplants. I used it in my book.
Yeah.
So Making Sense of Bioethics is very quick, but yet very profound, very meaningful essays on well over 100 different topics. There's also, as I mentioned, the ethical and religious directives. It's not as intimidating as it sounds. Like when I hear that, I'm like, oh, this is probably going to be, scores of pages. There's only about 80 directives, and each one's about a paragraph long. It's not very long. There's a few intros to different chapters on beginning of life, end of life, cooperation with evil, but still it's really, really useful because it's quick, and it explains what the church teaches on these really heavy subjects. And so those are just a few areas. And then I'll just give one last plug. My work with the National Catholic Bioethics Center, really such a humbling, but yet just fulfilling blessing of a career, of a profession. I work in their consultations department. And I want everyone online, and listen to this, to know that the National Catholic Bioethics Center offers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I hope I have that many days right. I think it's like 364 and a quarter, but let's just say every day they are available to answer questions, whether it's non-emergency and you can email the NCBC, or if it's an emergency, they have a 24-hour hotline that you can call and an ethicist will get back within an hour and will be able to kind of walk you through the ways to properly discern and inform your conscience so you can make a good prudential moral decision. So please know that NCBC is there, even in that capacity, which I think is really invaluable.
Wow. This stuff, Matt, one of the things I love learning stuff, and I'm learning a bunch today, man. This is awesome. We're talking about Catholic bioethics today on Beacon of Truth. We have Dr. Andrew Kubick joining us today. Would love to hear from you, my friends. 833-288-EWTN with your bioethics question, 833-288-3986. Karen is calling from Peoria, Illinois, listening on the Covenant Network. Karen, welcome to Beacon of Truth.
Thank you very much, Deacon Harold. And hello, Dr. Kubick.
Hello.
My question, hello?
Hello?
Yes, yeah, please.
I'm sorry.
Continue.
I'm in the car, unfortunately, but my question relates to a situation that our family is in right now. My mother-in-law is in hospice care at home. She's actively dying. She's been on morphine. She's been taken off of morphine. This has been going on for about a week. And there are some members of the family that are okay with the morphine. My husband doesn't feel comfortable with it, and there's a couple of other people in the family who also are not comfortable with the morphine. And I would just like some information on that just to set everybody's minds at ease. Margaret is very lucid sometimes, but most of the time not. She has been praying the Hail Mary almost nonstop every time she wakes up. So it's been a blessing to have all this time with her. We've been praying with her. But when she does have the morphine, it makes it a little more difficult for us to communicate with her. So I was wondering, what is your take on things?
Well, first I'll say, and you mentioned your mother's name is Margaret. I will take her to prayer tonight. My family and I will pray for her and for your family. These end of life situations are never easy. Truly, they're never easy. But I will say, and I think it's important to begin with, just the recognition that I'm not a physician or a lawyer, so I can't give legal or medical advice. For those type of questions, of course, see a physician or lawyer, so your medical team. But as an ethicist, what I can provide is maybe a few principles that you can consider when you're looking at the use of opioids, in this case morphine, when someone is nearing death. And so, again, prayers for Margaret and your family. We're kind of looking at two sides of a coin when we're dealing with providing pain meds when someone's nearing death. And that is, the first side is, well, we want to provide pain relief. It's a goal of medicine to try to render somebody pain-free through a moral or ethical way. So it is good that we try to do that, but we also, on the other side of that coin, we don't want to deprive someone of consciousness unless it becomes necessary to do so. So I know sometimes morphine can actually lead people into such a drowsy and distant state that they're almost asleep, or if they're awake, they're not really conscious. And so we don't want to deprive somebody of consciousness, especially as they near death, because there's so many goods that can actually occur, such as forgiveness between family members, and opportunities for people to engage in prayer who otherwise wouldn't. The recognition of seeing suffering as a way to place that suffering at the foot of the cross for one's own redemption or for the redemption of one's family. And so if we have to endure suffering, it's good that we put it to use, as our Lord has taught us. We give it to our Lord. We give it to Our Lady. And we ask them to use it for our own redemption or for the redemption of others. So we see that those final hours or days at the end of life are incredibly important, and we should be lucid. We should be aware as much as we can, but we have to balance that with, we also don't want to see people in dreadful pain. And so I can't really speak to the situation that you're enduring with your mother, but what I can say is you're going to look at both of those situations. And I also want to say that if you're dealing with the end of life, and I'm sure you're a good Catholic, and it's good Catholic family, you're calling into the show, you're listening to Deacon Harold, so I'm sure you already know this, but I would just be negligent if I didn't say, please make sure that she's received the sacraments, that she's received anointing of the sick, that she's received her last confession, viaticum, etc. So that's another reason we want to make sure people are aware at the end of life. So, but again, balancing that, when we're dealing with pain medications, we often look at a principle. It's called a principle of double effect. Mm-hmm. And that principle of double effect actually comes to us from St. Thomas Aquinas when he was considering self-defense. And what he said is that there's some actions that we can actually take that have both a positive or good effect as well as a negative or evil effect. How do we know when we're permitted to commit that action, knowing that it can bring about good and evil? Mm-hmm. And so he gives us 4 criteria, and I'm just going to give this to you just real quick, but something to think about. Is what we're doing actually good, or at least morally neutral or indifferent? So providing pain meds to somebody in pain seems to be a good act, But we can't just leave it there. We go then to the next criterion, and that is, what is our intention behind providing that pain med? Well, if the intention is to relieve pain, again, that seems like a noble intent. I'm not saying this is the case with you, but I have heard of this case. If it's to hasten death, my goodness, now we've entered into an evil intent, which corrupts the entire question in front of us. The third criterion is whether or not the good effect is brought about by the evil effect. I don't know if you've ever heard this phrase, but like the end justifies the means. That is not a Catholic phrase. We want to make sure that the good effect is brought about by the good action and the good intention, not by the evil. And then finally, the last one, and I can't speak to this, you can, because you're with your mother, your family's with your mother, is called proportionality. Is the pain she's enduring so severe that it makes providing this medicine, which causes drowsiness or unconsciousness, that it makes it actually proportionate? In other words, is she suffering so much that the good of rendering her into a pain-free state is worth the unconsciousness? I can't answer that question, but I know that principle of double effect would be really important in your case, something to study and to read about. And so again, I'll draw your attention to Father Tad Pacholczyk's Making Sense of Bioethics. I think one of his essays is called Too Much Morphine. But nevertheless, if you go to his Making Sense of Bioethics column, you can find essays on pain, on palliative care, on hospice. So I highly recommend that. And then, of course, the ethical and religious directives, they speak to that proportionality. They speak to that, well, we don't want to deprive consciousness unless we must, and we want to be very careful the type of medications we're providing.
Wow, awesome answer. Let's go to Eric in Boise, Idaho, listening to Beacon of Truth. I'm Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, talking about bioethics today. Eric is calling from Boise, Idaho, listening on Salt and Light Radio. Eric, welcome to Beacon of Truth. We have just a couple minutes left.
All right. So my best friend was in 2020 was killed in a car wreck. Well, he had a really bad car wreck, and then his wife decided to donate his organs, and he was in a coma for 6 weeks. I had a really bad motorcycle wreck in 2005, and I was in a coma for 2 days shy of 6 weeks. And so, obviously, there's a huge moral wrong in killing somebody, donating organs. If I ever evangelize her, meet her again, because his kids aren't they're not raised Catholic, they're not being raised Catholic. So I don't know where I go to. I forgive her, but it really makes me upset that she killed my best friend.
Well, I really hope that you have this conversation with your pastor, with a trusted priest. These questions, and you're right on in terms of it's good and holy desire to want to forgive someone. I mean, that is truly, and it could be very hard. It could be very, very hard, but that is what God asks of us. And so a moral question like this that isn't necessarily bioethical but moral, I would highly recommend you speak to your pastor, a priest, a trusted deacon, and talk about kind of the obstacles in your way to full forgiveness. Or maybe even if you already have forgiven in your heart, how you can extend that forgiveness so they know that you have forgiven them, that you've recognized the wrong, but yet you love them and you pray for them. And please know, even if you can't extend that forgiveness, you can always pray for the individual, and God knows through that prayer that you truly want what's best for them. You don't want their harm, you want their goodness, you want their flourishing. And so I would take that to prayer. Now, I will just say one quick thing, because I think at the heart, if I were to find a bioethical aspect, I would say look into the conversation on brain death. Brain death is a topic right now in bioethics that is very controversial, and a lot of people are studying it and trying to understand it.
All right, my friends, may God bless you, keep you, and protect you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Hey, this is Michael O'Neill, the Miracle Hunter. I'll be delving into the fascinating world of miracles and taking you on a hunt that explores the greatest mysteries and marvels of the Catholic